Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. Today on the show, we have Ben Ilegbodu. Ben, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I am so pumped to have you on the show, and I really appreciate. We were supposed to do this a couple weeks back, and it was all smoky on the West Coast, and so I
Yep.
appreciate you being flexible. Chat, I appreciate y'all being flexible and coming back. So, Ben, for those of us who are not familiar with your work, uh,
Yep.
can you give us a little bit of a background?
Sure. So, like you said, I'm Ben Ilegbodu. I work at Stitch Fix, so I'm a principal front end engineer there. I am on I guess you would call it our platform team. So, I don't work on direct user features. I work on the stuff that enables my teammates to build the features for our
Mm-hmm.
users. So, that's our design system that I've been working on for about a year since I've been there the whole time. That's in React. It's also in TypeScript, kind of the motivation for us hanging out
Yeah.
today. And then the other side of it is what I call DevOps, which is like front end infrastructure stuff. So not
Oh,
DevOps, but
interesting.
DevOps. Yes, one of my friends coined that term and I just
That
love it.
I'm into that. Okay, so
Yeah,
let's talk about that a little bit because I feel like
sure.
so like Chris Coyer put out this whole post about
Mhm.
the evolution of front end development and how
Yes.
it's gotten so much bigger, right? And so
Yep.
what you just said touches on, I think, one of the most surprising parts of front end development, which is there's now like a back end development for front end
Exactly.
development. And is
Yeah.
that what you're talking about with DevOps?
Yeah, basically. So, it's your Webpack configurations,
Hmm.
making sure Babel is transpiling correctly, setting up Eslint rules, like all of those sorts of things that, we don't want our teams to have to focus on, each
Yeah.
individual team to have to deal with. So we're trying to consolidate how all of that works. And, quite frankly, not everybody knows or wants to know how that stuff works. So, but
It can
those
be a
things
lot.
are yeah, those things are key though for your app to be performant, to be optimized, and to just work in general.
Hmm.
So it's a core competency, and I'm seeing some companies even like having roles just for that sort of thing.
For sure.
But then
Yeah.
to your point, what I find myself is I'm working on this like back end, working on Webpack configs, but then I'm also working with our designers writing components to um, for our design library. So it's design component library. So it's like this whole breadth of stuff, not to mention, the actual building of UIs and things like that. So
Yeah,
it's
I
getting
think it's
bigger and bigger.
and especially as we're moving into this world of like you can build entire applications in the front end with just
Yeah.
APIs in the back, right?
Yep.
When you're looking at that, like it's no longer something that you would take to like a Java architect, right? Or like if you're looking at big old school enterprise companies that have a lot of software architects, you kind of come from more traditional monolithic or just using like
Yeah.
hardcore backend languages. It
Yeah.
doesn't really make sense to have that type of architect designing these almost entirely front end apps.
Yeah,
Um,
there's some things you can borrow from those sorts of
for sure.
setups and things, and we have those architects at Stitch Fix, and they help with setting up our APIs because our APIs are in house, so we still have to make sure those are correct, and just how all of the systems are working together is important. But like to your point, not those people yet haven't understood what's going on in the front end. So a lot
Yeah,
of it is just communication to figure out like this is how this stuff works, and
absolutely.
understanding so that they can lend their expertise even in that area as well. Because
Yeah.
generally they have lots, so we want to be able to make use of it.
Yeah, and a lot of what you're talking about here, I think, is really interesting. You just said like communicate how this stuff works, and I think that it's important to communicate that cross functionally, but also just internally. And
Hmm.
maybe your experience is going to mirror mine here. But what I found is a lot of the kind of foundational stuff that we do, the DevOps work, is it's almost like a form of internal communication. It's trying to set up guardrails and guide people
Yep.
down the right path so they don't get
Yep.
themselves into trouble.
Yep.
How actually that kind of ties into what we're going to talk about today. Like, what kind of tools are you using, and what approaches do you take to make sure that you're setting up people for success on your team?
Yeah. So I have this mentality I'll say that I'm planning to blog about it.
Nice.
But I like tooling over documentation.
Okay.
So docs are great, but the docs that are like, here are our best practices on how we do X, or you should never do Y, or whatever. It's like, if I can create tooling to enforce that, that's so much better than trying to have documentation that goes out of date in 3 months, 6 months, or whatever. So Eslint is a perfect example of that. Some of it is preventing errors, but some of it is styling things that we care about for whatever reason. And some of them are, you might shoot yourself in the foot if you're doing this, so we're going to have an Eslint rule around it. I find that better than trying to have documentation and things around it. So TypeScript is another perfect example of those sorts of things, like using double equals versus triple equals in JavaScript. Well, TypeScript's going to enforce a lot of these type things that we try to push in lint rules or even communication that I think is really helpful. So more things that automation can do and GitHub checks can do, the better.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, and that makes sense, right? Because in my job, I get handed a million things that I'm supposed to know and pay attention to and like read and comprehend. And there's just no way I can do it all. So most of the time I'm making best guesses. So if we as engineers can kind of smooth the path and take away some of that thinking, some of that cognitive overhead, so that the software kind of writes itself the way that it's supposed to be written, because I can't push it otherwise. Like that's a great thing for me. And so how does TypeScript tie into that? Like what are we able to do with TypeScript that makes it worth the effort of switching?
Well, so first I want to kind of preface it that there is effort, right? So I don't want to gloss over that or anything like that. It's definitely effort, but it's worthwhile in my opinion. And hopefully we'll be able to jump into some of those examples. But I think it helps prevent those times where we shoot ourselves in the foot because we're being too clever, or we forget about the certain aspect, or I'm pretty sure this thing is never going to be undefined, so I'm not going to check it, or things like that. And even in React, confusion things like this prop was never declared in the prop types, but it's used in the code. It's not marked as required, but it's definitely used as if it's required. Right. Well, that's just a recipe for disaster coming up. So if TypeScript can enforce that when I call this component, I have to pass in a value, that saves, just so much communication, like we're saying, and then potentials for gotchas as well.
For sure. And so, so when we're talking about TypeScript, like at a super high level, what is the difference between just JavaScript and TypeScript? Kind of what's the major value proposition of it?
Yeah. So the nice thing about TypeScript and JavaScript is that the delta has actually been shrinking since the beginning of TypeScript, because at the beginning, ES6 hadn't even come out. So things like classes and a lot of these new features that found their way into ES6 were only in TypeScript. So it was a big change. But now it's like a lot of the new features, new proposals and things like that are finding their way in ES6 or into TypeScript that are also in JavaScript. Okay. So really what you'll find is the difference is declaring types, basically. And you declare that this type is a string, this type is a number, this type is an object of this shape, and things like that. And it enforces that what you say it is, you act on it how it is. So you can't pass a number to something that expects a string. If this thing can be undefined or a string, before you act on it, you actually have to check to make sure that it exists, things like that. So that's what the typing really helps with. Okay. So there are new things like interfaces that exist, but mostly it's all around being able to declare types.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So chat, as always, thanks for hanging out with us. Before we jump into the code, I want to take a quick minute to shout out our sponsors. So let me switch over into this view.
Nice.
So first of all, everybody go follow Ben. Thank you so much again for being here today to teach us.
Of course.
And remember, the captions are available at lwj.dev/live. What's going on here? Why don't you think we're live? Oh, that's no good.
We definitely are live.
We are live. Yeah, I can see the Twitch. Are you bugging out on me? Oh, that's a bummer. Okay. So I'm going to have to, hey, Whitecoat, can you send me the link to the iframe that I usually embed here so that I can put that up somewhere? We'll get the link up in just a second, but that is made, let's see, I'm just going to type this up. It is at streamtext.net player, and it is event learn with Jason. And so this, if you want to watch the live captioning, is going to be right there. You can follow along in a browser of your choosing. I will figure out why Twitch has betrayed me today, and we'll fix that for future episodes. The live captioning is made possible by the generous sponsorship of Netlify, Fauna, Sanity, and Auth0, who have all kicked in to make this show more accessible to more people. And that is provided by Whitecoat Captioning. Thank you so much, as always, for being here. With that being said, why don't we jump right into this? So if I'm ready to start, like I want to write a TypeScript project, but I haven't done it before.
Yep.
How should I get started? What's the first thing I should do?
Well, yeah, so the first thing is, if you don't have an app at all, Create React App is always the way to go, and it supports TypeScript. So I suggest that we do that. But the nice thing is, even if you do have an app already that exists, before, if you're going from trying to add TypeScript, you have to switch over from Babel to TypeScript, because there's two parts of this. There's the type checking, and there is the transpilation to vanilla JavaScript. So before, the only way you could get TypeScript to transpile to vanilla JavaScript was using the TypeScript compiler. But now with Babel 7, there's a new plugin. It's the TypeScript Babel plugin or preset. Nice. So now you can have Babel do all the transpilation with the React plugin and all of your other nice plugins, and go from TypeScript to vanilla JavaScript. But then type checking still happens with the TypeScript compiler. So you can still stay in your Babel universe and all your nice plugins and things like that. So it's pretty sweet. But to start with, don't worry about all those things. That goes into DevOps land again. We can just use Create React App to create it. You just pass in the TypeScript template. We'll find it here on the docs as we go.
All right, so there's a whole bunch of stuff here. Maybe I want to look at...
They have the search at the top. Maybe just type TypeScript at the top there. Yeah. There
Using TypeScript with Create React App.
How about that?
Oh, look at that. That is beautiful. Yep. Okay. So we're right here.
Nice NPX call too. Sweet.
Don't have to install any globals. I'm always a fan of that.
Yeah. Except we need to name it. We need to change the name of it. We just created an app called My App.
So I created a folder. If I do this, does this work in Create React App? Do you know?
I can't remember, actually. We'll find out in a second.
Let's roll the dice. Let's see what happens. Is it going to yell at us? Looks like it's working.
Yeah.
Creating a new React app in... Yep.
Yeah. So there we have it.
Very cool. Okay, so we are getting in. It's installing whatever we need. I see React scripts, TypeScript utils.
Yep.
Okay. So let's... So I have to apologize, chat. The boop overlay is broken. I'm in the process of rebuilding the overlays for my stream, and they will be much better soon. I've been kind of pushing on the Jamstack conf, which ended earlier this week, and I can finally breathe again. So I have time for side projects.
Nice.
Let's go ahead and pop open this code and take a look at what we got. So this is what we just set up here. We've got our git ignore, and I think I might need to open this again. Yes, I'm going to get init here. I'm going to close this, and then I'm just going to open it again so that VS Code picks up the right git ignore. Good. Yeah, that's what we wanted. So so in here, I can see we've got a tsconfig, package JSON,
tsconfig.
And this looks really similar to a Create React app, all the things that I would expect. Types, that feels very TypeScripty. And then we've got TypeScript itself.
Yep.
Okay. I see .tsx versus .js or .jsx.
Yeah, so in TypeScript, your React components have to end in .tsx.
Okay.
Like it's not a either or like it is in JavaScript. It needs to be TSX.
Got it. Yep. Okay. Well, I guess being explicit is not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So what should we look at first? Like, do you want to walk through what's in here? Do you want to just start showing some code? What's the right way to onboard, do you think?
Well, we can start the app, right? So you're using Yarn, I'm assuming. So you can Yarn start, and we can see the React logo spinning there. That's just a nice getting started. And when that all works.
There we go.
There. Wonderful. We can take a look at the app.tsx, like it says, and cool. Even just see what basic TypeScript looks like.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm going to take this over here and this over here. Let's open up. Oops. No, that is definitely not the button I mean to push. This one. So here's our app.tsx.
Yep.
And
so do you get that all the time? That
I don't know what happened.
Now
I don't know what happened. Like something got updated and now everything's broken. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
I get that all the time in VS Code. It was some new version of VS Code. I have to accept Eslint every time.
Every time.
And I'm just like, just remember. Okay. Anyway, so here is our React component and TypeScript. There aren't actually any types going on in here because we just have the component and it's returning JSX here. But if we wanted to, for instance, let's say we wanted to make a link component and take out that A tag and put it in its own component, that's when things can get interesting. So,
yeah, let's do it. So we'll create a link component.
Yeah. And we'll pass in the URL and the content. How about that?
Okay. So do you have a preference? Like here, this is defined as a function. That seems to make sense to me. I see people declare as constants. And then I also see like here, it does the export default at the bottom. I've also seen like this. That's what I've started doing. What do you prefer?
Preference? Yeah. So it's funny in React. It's like there are so many different ways to do everything, right? So I prefer const arrow functions.
Okay.
I can't really defend the reason why, but that's what I like doing. Maybe because you can have implicit returns, but anyway, that's the form I like. But the problem is with that form, I can't do export default with the named of the arrow.
That is true.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's always the argument against it, but
So what I've just done here is I have written what I would have done as a regular React component.
Yep. So
I just threw together, it's got a name, that's the name of the component. It's going to take a URL prop and a content prop, and then it'll use the URL as the href, and it'll use the content as whatever's being linked.
Yep.
Is there anything else that we want to do here?
So I'm seeing a squiggly under the link.
Yes.
Can you hover over that? Is that telling us anything interesting?
You know what? I'm wondering if let me open this in my I have a different VS Code profile that is significantly muted. It's got like everything turned off. So
Yeah,
let
you
me.
definitely want these helper things with TypeScript, as we'll see. It
Okay.
really gives good insight.
Yes, I will allow it, please.
Yeah.
All right, let's try that again. So I'm going to do
Yeah.
a link, and that is going to have URL, and I guess maybe we want children instead of content, right? So that we can just use it like a regular.
children.
Okay. So then we'll return href URL and the children. And then down here, we would use that like link.
Yeah, let's go ahead and put those class names inside of the A tag. We'll put the target inside of the A tag. Like those are the 3 props: class name, target, rel. Let's just throw that into the A tag.
Okay.
We can make it configurable later if we choose.
So you just want to move these in?
Yeah, we'll just pass in the URL.
Got it.
That's the only part that'll be configurable. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to let. There we go. And then auto format should handle all that for me. Good.
Nice.
All right. So this one I think was because it wasn't being used.
Yeah. Okay. And then, all right. So here we're already getting some helpful information in TypeScript saying that the URL is an implicit any, which is disallowed in our TypeScript configuration. Same thing for children. And I'll explain a little bit more what that is as we go. Like basically the default type is any. That means you didn't add any types to your thing. And that's basically what JavaScript is. It's any. Everything could be anything, and there's no restrictions.
No parents, no rules.
Yep. There is. My perception is if you're going to invest in TypeScript and learn it and all this stuff, you should not support any. Like you should always have to have a type, no implicit any. There are other people who say, hey, TypeScript can do some things for you. Just, don't be so strict and such. But I don't know. I just don't see the value in doing that and being a little bit loose. So I always stick to it. So that's my perception.
Okay. So then if I want to make this not any, how do we do that in TypeScript?
Yes. So what I wanted to also do, I think if you go down below and you go to your link where you're calling it, there should, okay, we don't have the error there yet. But let's go. Okay, let's define the types for the link.
Okay.
So nice thing about a React component is that it's just a function. It takes in some props and it returns some JSX, right? Mm-hmm. So we can type it just like we type anything in TypeScript. So once again, there are a couple of ways to do this, sadly. But what I use is it's called an interface in TypeScript. So above here, before the comment, I guess, you can say interface props. So capital P, and then curly braces.
Okay.
So here's where we're going to define the types of our props. So URL is a string. So like URL colon
like
string. Yep. Just like that. And once again, you can have semicolon at the end, comma at the end, or nothing, or a new line at the end.
Okay.
So how you separate them. So
that works.
Yep.
This works. This works.
And that works.
Chaos.
So that will probably your Eslint rule will probably dictate how that works, or your prettier config will dictate what you end up doing. But yes, chaos. won't go into that. Okay, so then to type children is react.react node. So that's just something that you're going to have to just learn. So that's what the type of children is.
And so this is a type. Oh, if I hover, I can see.
Yeah, you can see what it is.
This is a type exported from React so that we can use it with TypeScript.
Yeah. So you can command click, and that should open up the type if you ever want to nerd out how that stuff has been defined. You can see, hey, a React node is a React child, a React fragment, or a portal, or a Boolean, or a null, or undefined. and then they're like
as it is
nested things. So a React child is
right. So we'd
is
click
a
on
React
this, and then we would
element.
see more.
Yep.
Click on
You go
this,
and
and we
go
would
and
see
go.
more. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's a rabbit hole, right? It's going to keep
Yeah.
going down.
So the question is, hey, where do those types come from? Like, who wrote that? That's not actually in the React package itself. It's in a separate peer package called @types/React there.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you go back to our package JSON, you remember we saw some types that were being imported in addition to some other things?
Yes, here.
Yes. So @types line 11 is where that comes from.
Got it.
So it's a separate thing. So if your dependency isn't written in TypeScript, it needs to get TypeScript can only work if the dependencies have type definitions. So if your dependency doesn't have it innately inside of it, then you have to go get it from this resource called definitely typed.
Okay, let's find that link. Definitely
you want to
typed.
go into that? Definitely
Well,
typed.
I think it's definitely typed. Here we go.
Yeah.
Or
So
I should go to the .org, right?
I always go to the GitHub. Oh yeah, I do go here. Yes. Yeah. So
Okay.
this is a repo of, I don't know, 5,000 plus
Dang.
definite type definitions for your popular packages and probably unpopular packages. So Lodash is in here, jQuery is in here, React is in here, Moment is in here. People still use Moment. I'm sure data functions
Yeah.
in here. So pretty much everything you want to use is in here so that you're able to have type safe code, because you
That's
want to
cool.
make sure that when you call those functions that you're passing the right types and getting back the right types. So,
Yeah, and so like what about like Next.js? Maybe? Yeah, Next.
yeah.
Gatsby. Nuxt. Nuxt might already be written in TypeScript. There's a bunch
Yeah, it all
of Nuxt
depends.
adjacent things. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's really cool. So a lot of frameworks in here. A lot of tools. Okay. So now that we've got access to those here in our React node, then
But it was implicit. We got it implicitly by importing from React at the top. So TypeScript
is
knows that.
Is that like a VS Code thing, or is that a thing that like?
That's a TypeScript thing.
Okay.
So
and
when
so
you
would it, if I
import
did
from-
this in Sublime or IntelliJ or whatever, do I have to enable like a TypeScript extension for that to work? I would assume yes.
To work in your editor so that you can command click and do all that fanciness, probably. But for TypeScript to just work, so TypeScript works in the editor in VS Code innately out of the box, which we're going to see is amazing. If you use IntelliJ or TextMate or whatever, you can still write your TypeScript code just fine and it'll run in the browser just fine. But to have that integration, you're going to need plugins.
Gotcha.
And such.
Okay.
Yeah. So because you imported from React, it goes and it looks to see, well, does React, the package itself, have the TypeScript definitions? Oh, no, it doesn't. So let me look at @types/React. Yes, you got that. Here's where the types are.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So we've written an interface. We've called that interface props. We've defined our URL and we've defined children, but I'm still getting this error. So what do I have to do next?
So the last piece is we have to tell TypeScript that the props that are being passed in URL children is of type props, the interface. So after the curly brace right there, colon, and then capital P props. And then now we've told it that those are the props.
Oh, and look at this. Immediately now we can see.
Now it knows.
That's cool.
Those
All right.
types.
And so what happens if I try to break this then? Like I'm going to pass in 100.
Yep.
Oh, that is very cool. Okay.
Well, what if you try to remove URL and don't pass it?
Oh, that's just syntax errors.
Yeah, that's a syntax error.
Property URL is missing.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So the cool thing about interfaces, as opposed to prop types is that the properties of an interface are required by default.
Okay.
You have to pass them. You have to mark it. So like I was saying before, how, people will list things in their prop types, but some are required, some are not, but they forget to mark the things that are required. That's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here in your interfaces, your properties are required by default.
So what if I want to make one optional? So let's say I want to pass through this class name.
Yep.
And so I'm gonna put this through here, but I don't necessarily expect this one to always be used. So I'm gonna get it here. Actually, let's just see what happens when I add a property that's not defined.
Yeah, let's do that.
Does not exist on type props. Okay.
Can't do it. Won't let you.
Okay.
You have to define it. Like, no hidden props inside of your code.
I like that. Okay. Yep. And then this is going to be a string, I would assume.
Yeah.
Okay. Again. But I don't want to have to send it. I want to be able to leave this thing out.
Now it's required. So if you do remove it, you're not passing class name, right? Again. And can we take a second to see like all of this VS Code inline tooltips are amazing. Like we haven't even yet gone to the browser for it to tell us this information.
Yeah.
Like if you saved and you went to the browser, it's going to tell you that error, that you can't do
start
that.
The site again.
If the app was running and such. But we are able to see all of these type information like as we develop. So we're getting instant feedback without even having to go to the browser at all, which is like amazing.
This is really, really nice.
So
if we want to this is disheartening, right? Like if you're working in the browser and you make a code change and you don't know that code change is wrong, and then you just see these big red errors, that's a bummer. But this, where it's like, okay, I typed a thing and now it's mad at me and I don't have to change context. That makes this a little more approachable, I think.
That's why I think it's worth it. Like you still have to learn some things, especially as you get more complicated, but I think it's worth it because of that.
Yeah. So there's a question here that I'm not even sure what like how we would approach this because I don't know anything about this, but can you talk about the differences between types and interfaces and kind of which one should be used to define props? And maybe you can tell me what that means. So
let's do the class name.
Yes. Sorry.
Defaulting,
finish your thought.
and then we can switch to that.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we wanted to make class name optional, we put there's multiple ways to do this. But the canonical way is after class name, before the colon, you put a question mark. Yes. Right there on line 8.
Nope. Question mark.
Yes.
Okay.
So what that ends up saying is the type is string or undefined. So if you hover over class name, it's going to tell you that string or undefined.
Oh, okay.
If you do it on line 12, it'll tell you that string or undefined. Line
12.
Line 12. Yeah, in the definition.
Gotcha.
Oh, that's string or undefined. Same inside. So that's a way to make it optional. So,
and then
that you don't have to pass it in. Save, everything is good.
I do.
We got to pass it in.
What was that?
I don't remember what
app
it
link.
was.
App link.
Yes, app link. Yeah. Hey, what happens if you forget and you do class instead of class name? Oh, another thing. It tells you.
Ooh.
Yes.
Property class, intrinsic attributes and props.
Yes.
Did you mean class name? I like it when they tell you how to fix your problems in the report.
So these errors can be a little interesting, right? Because there's all this information in it. So could you remove the class name part or just the name part and just have class?
Yep.
There like we did. So what I like to do when I'm reading the errors is I try to read bottom to top.
Okay.
right? So I'll read property class does not exist on type intrinsic attributes. Did you mean class name? And I'll start with there. And I'm like, okay, that's enough information for me to actually understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was a case where that wasn't enough, we may see this case. Then I'll go higher and then see, oh, type children, blah, 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 is not assignable to type, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
So reading bottom to top, I find is much helpful in
That's
dealing with the errors.
That's a pro tip.
Pro tip.
All right. So we'll call this class name so we stop getting those squigglies. And then maybe we can revisit. So
that question.
Yeah. So interfaces versus types. I would have, if you had asked me before I read that question, I would have said this is a type. So is there a difference?
Yes. Yeah. So the question is, let's add a new line. The other way to define this is type, then space props. Let's give it a different name. I don't know, props B or something. Link props. There you go. I like that. And then we can copy the contents of that in there.
Okay.
Except it needs to be type link props equals the object.
Okay.
There you go. So this is another way to define it. And actually, the name you gave is like the other common way I see of naming the props for a component is component name props.
Okay.
That way.
And so if I do this,
everything works the same.
Same general outcome.
Yes.
Okay.
So the difference for 95% of the cases, maybe even 99% of the cases, is there's no difference.
Okay.
This is exactly the same. Just another way to do things. Right. The actual difference, and if you try to read the docs that explain it, it's like so convoluted. And I found the actual difference is that when you define it as a type, it gets the definition of the type is the object. So it passes around that object everywhere that you've declared link props. Whereas if you use interface, the definition is props, which is a reference to the object. So anywhere you see it, it'll actually be declaring the type as props itself.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense. It only comes into play like in certain places when you are referencing this type in like a parent that's using this component. It's really convoluted. Interfaces. So both of these things can be extended in certain ways. There's like different ways to extend the props. So if you wanted to declare props and then add some more properties, create, a new interface that had more properties to it, there are ways to do that as well. It's just different syntax. So like really it's like choose which one you want. So
gotcha.
I always use interfaces. I always get this question from people who actually have used it, and it's really, really negligible, the difference. So generally it doesn't matter, I'll say. I have run into cases where it has mattered and I've had to use types. So there were some situations where interface didn't work. However, I like defining them as interfaces just because of the syntax around extending and defining that way.
Nice.
So,
and I just saw Orta from Orta, you're still on the TypeScript team, right? Orta just dropped a link to the differences between type aliases and interfaces.
Probably could explain it much better. Hey, this has been expanded. Before, this used to be a two sentence explanation. Now there's like way more explanation. So this is great. Nice. Yeah. Thank you very much.
So we'll make sure this ends up in the show notes as well. It's been linked in the chat. Yeah. But yeah, so this is all starting to click to me, right? And I'm starting to see the benefits of like why this is useful, because what I want to show is usually where I start to like notice when things don't have typings is if I come out here and I'm like, let's create link.tsx, and I'm gonna drop all this in here, and I need to import React from React. Okay, so then I will
export default link. Yeah.
Link. All right. Now I'm going to come out here and let's import link from link. And okay, so now we've got this link, but like I don't know how to use it. So if I take this one out, right, and then I'm going to come in here, I want to just like, okay, I'm going to use my link, and now what do I do? Hey, look at this. Look at this beautiful definition right in line of how to use this thing. And then it'll show me that I need things. Like, that is really cool. I need stuff.
Exactly.
So, all right, I need URL and children. So if I start typing, and I think, right, I can even, or maybe that's not going to work for me. If I come in here, isn't there a command? Yeah, there's a command here where like, as I start
typing, you start typing. You just type. You see the list up there, right there.
Yeah,
Those
right. So what I did
that you can specify
is I hit space and then I hit control space, and it shows me these are the things that we can put on this.
Yep.
That is just so slick.
They're types. They're types too.
Yeah. Like how slick is that just works. So anyways,
you can do something additionally cool.
Okay, I'm in.
If you go into the link component, let's add a variant prop, right? And
variant, okay.
So we'll call the variant regular. So put the string regular, and then a pipe, and the string dark. I don't know, just as two options. So this is a union. No. Yes, this is a union of two values. So we can say variant can either be regular, the string, or variant can be dark, the string. So let's make it, let's pass it in. We're not really putting it anywhere, but that's fine. And now if we go back into app.tsx and you start typing in variant.
Oh, cool.
It'll tell you these are the only two values you can pass in for it. Like,
look at that.
And it'll complete. Yes.
That is so okay. All right.
Like the integration in VS Code is amazing.
That is slick. All right, you got me sold. I'm into it. So that is extremely cool that just worked. And now it's telling us we're missing our variant. Okay.
Missing your variant, pass it in.
So we can add our variant. Get that regular. That works for me. And we're not using it, but that's okay. We just wanted to show how it works. I mean, this is really slick, right? I feel like these are the sorts of things that it's easy when you look at TypeScript to just go, I don't care if my JavaScript is type safe. And I think that like a lot of times where we're thinking about that at is at the very last stage of writing JavaScript. Mm-hmm. And I think we forget that like there are layers ahead of this where we've got components that are going to be used by other people. We've got node packages or other libraries that are going to be exposed, and someone's never going to see the source code. So how do we, I can write a great README and I can show all the use cases.
Yep.
Or I can add a type and it'll autocomplete for them.
Yep, exactly. Which is this, it's just it's like what I was saying again. It's like writing docs versus tooling. And TypeScript is tooling. It forces all that stuff, gives you all the documentation for the most part, whereas you don't have to write it. So it's keeping in sync all the time. Yeah,
that part too, I think is interesting because it gets back to the idea of like, you said earlier, if you write docs, either you have someone whose job it is to keep those docs up to date, or you have docs that steadily get out of date. And so it's really nice to know that, just by writing your application, you are communicating clearly about how it's supposed to be used.
Yep, exactly. There's something else cool I wanted to show. This isn't specifically React, but it comes in handy. So if we go back to our link component, and we had one of them that was optional, class name.
Yes.
So let's say inside of the component class name, we wanted to, let's declare a Boolean, which this is actually will be good. So let's declare a variable above line 19 that's like has, I don't know, or is what class name are we passing in?
We're passing in like app
string?
link.
Okay, so let's say is, I don't know, something that's how about has underscore, or does it have a hyphen in it?
It has a hyphen, yeah.
Okay, has hyphen. Let's just do that. Okay. So if we were going to do that, we would say class name dot includes, contains. I always forget which one it is. Includes. Hey, so this already was awesome. It auto completed that because it knows.
Whoa! Look at this.
I'm telling you. So here's the thing. It knows class name is a string, so it knows all the methods that strings have. Right?
Oh dang!
So that's you already skipped over the fact that it showed includes for you.
Yeah, right. Awesome. Like,
and then it knows that class name can be undefined. Yeah, so this is all the things that string have.
This is wild.
Which is amazing. So I was like, is it includes? Is it contains? I can't remember. Oh, it includes.
And y'all are seeing that it's like already got this null check in here.
Yep, it's already got that because it
cool.
knows that class name is undefined. Bam, did it for you. It saved you from your eventual undefined is not defined.
Yeah, can't call method includes of undefined or whatever it is. Yeah, like yes, and that is one of those things that we would, of course, like knowing me, I would have written like, this can never fail.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, we've all seen that comment when we're bug hunting, right? Like, this is impossible. And then it's inevitably the thing that takes down production.
Yeah. And then now, has hyphen is already typed as a Boolean. So if you hover over it, it's now a Boolean or undefined because it can be undefined in that case.
Okay.
So we didn't actually have to provide a type for what has hyphen is.
Yeah.
That's type inference that now tells us that has hyphen is a Boolean or undefined.
Which
is great.
Super slick. And then is it smart enough that if I were to do something like this, would it?
Guess what? It's only a Boolean now.
Oh my God. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm switching everything to TypeScript tomorrow.
Yep. So it can figure all that stuff out. So I forget what the term is for this, but it knows that once you do a check, that within that check, that existence check, within that, it knows now what the type is. You have proven to it that it cannot be undefined.
That is super cool.
So, yeah.
Man, that is wild. Okay, so I'll be honest. I have been lukewarm on TypeScript, and I've been lukewarm on TypeScript for one very particular reason, which you kind of addressed right off the bat, which is that when you have something like TypeScript, and anytime it gets frustrating, you immediately escape to any. It's like, well, why bother?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so that to me has always kind of kept me from putting it in. I've also seen people go through some pretty intense gymnastics to write types. And it seems like they're playing like the type golf game as opposed to shipping code.
Yes.
And so I think those have always been my major pushbacks, right? But what I'm seeing here is that if we're thoughtful about how we write stuff and we're putting these things in, especially to the components that we're shipping to other developers or to any code that we're shipping to other developers, the speed gains that we're going to get through the code catching these errors before I even hit my browser.
Yeah.
Even before I do local development, right? I can write this code without a dev server running, and I'll still catch a lot of these errors way before I save the file. That to me seems like that's enough of a speed boost to make up for the initial slowdown of having to write these types.
Yeah, exactly. And I forget who it was that said it now at React Conf. This was like 3 years ago. Said, if you find yourself struggling with writing types or basically developing your types instead of developing your app, maybe the code you're writing is too complicated. Like it's kind of a sign that maybe you should simplify your code because you're trying to do some things. Because when you're signing up for TypeScript, you're signing up for your code to be more strict. So you won't be able to do everything you could before. So that's the kind of gotcha. So especially when you are transitioning existing code from JavaScript to TypeScript is when you will find that case, because you wrote it in a way that, oh yeah, this will definitely work in this case. I don't have to, I know that by the end it's going to be this type sort of situation, and that could be hard for TypeScript.
Yeah. I mean, this is really, really nice. And also, quick shout out, thank you, Pilo, for the sub. I really appreciate that. 7 months, that's amazing. And Fimian says Cassidy is going to be unhappy about this. That is true. Cassidy has also been lukewarm on TypeScript. But okay, I don't know. I think if she watches this, I think she might turn around.
Send her the video.
Yeah. And you know, she can't get away from me. She's got to work from me. So now the call is coming from inside the house, Cassidy. You're in trouble now. Okay. So I mean, this is really, really interesting, and Musha's in the chat. He says that WebStorm and IntelliJ all have great integration in TypeScript, and we've talked about that a little bit earlier. You can find plugins to make TypeScript really friendly. I think you've got I think CodePen has great TypeScript support now, and Code Sandbox and the online editors too. So I think we're starting to see that TypeScript is feeling less like an add-on and more like the first thing that any JavaScript IDE thinks about.
Yeah, it's getting there.
Because as we just saw, this makes it feel like the IDE is magic. And actually, this is not VS Code. This is TypeScript, and VS Code just hooks into it. So it's like a big power up for an IDE to have TypeScript support. I
think so. I totally agree.
Excellent. Okay, so what if we do find ourselves in a complex situation, right? So if I'm a situation that I find myself in is, for example, I have let's say I have a component. Maybe what we can do is we can just create a new component, and we can talk through what I would find myself doing. So let's say this is a complicated string generator, right?
Okay.
And so what this thing is going to do is this is going to take a few things and turn them into a URL. And a way that I ran into this, and this is a real world use case, is are you familiar with Cloudinary?
Yeah. So I just use it thanks to you.
Oh, that's right. You just did the social cards.
Yes, I did.
Oh man. Okay. So this is cool. What's where's, I think that tweet is up close to the top, right?
Should be close.
Check these out, right? These are auto-generated, and they're using Cloudinary, which is really, really cool. But so to generate a Cloudinary link, you have to add in all these settings. There's text, there's sizes, there's all this stuff. So what I found myself doing was I would have this config object, and in my config object, I'm doing something like I've got we'll say, width and height and I can't spell today, height. And then we would have, let's say, crop type. And then you've got some other things. So you've got your text, right? And then in your text, you've got, the font family. We'll just make this family, size, and weight.
Okay.
And that's probably complex enough. But as you can see, this would get more complex as it goes, right? So you end up with these pretty complex types here. So if I wanted to write this, I feel like I wouldn't be able to. I mean, maybe I can. If I just come up here and I go interface, and then I would say complex config.
Yep, complex config.
And then I get my width, and that one's going to be
a number.
Yeah. Height would also be a number.
Yeah.
Crop, this would have a bunch of things, but we can say like fill or thumb or something like that.
Okay.
And then my font, I can't do this, right?
You can do that.
I can do this. Like, this is working?
Yeah. So that's a type alias. It's just doesn't have a name, but that's just like an inline type there. So
okay. What if I want to do a range? So like I have like a font weight can be any number 100 to 900.
100 to 900. Okay. I don't think there is a utility for this, but let's check. So if you type or search for TypeScript utilities. Oh, look, Orta is telling us that's a mapped type.
I think that might be, depending on the prop value, change other props in the same interface to optional or required. Oh, so that's like if we added
the last one. Oh, he's talking about something else. Okay.
Yeah, he's talking about something else, which actually would be kind of an interesting thing, because there's another thing we could do where instead of a width and height, we provide our aspect ratio. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that would give us a whole other thing we could look at. But okay, so I've got utility types. Is that where you want me to be?
Yes. So these are some helpful types but I'm not sure if range is in there. I haven't ever seen range. So obviously you could, the short of it.
Orta was not listening, but he is now. We're trying to figure out how we would do a range. Like if I had a variable font, I can enter any value between, let's say this variable font has a 100 to 900. A range primitive?
I don't think there is a range.
No range primitive.
Kind of like Lodash range.
Okay.
So the worst case scenario is to use a union. So like 100 pipe, 101 pipe, 102 pipe, 103
right,
pipe.
Right.
And that will work. You could kind of for it to verify.
I mean, it's not. Wait, would that
be?
How does that? Hold on, Orta's showing us something. So
you could, if you defined it this way, then you would have your code verify that it's between those two numbers.
So I'm doing something wrong.
It's a tuple. So it's a if you do there's a utility type for tuple, I believe. But if you wanted to define an array of two numbers, then you don't need to name them. You could just say number that way. So you pass in basically the bottom number and the top number, and then you would verify that it's between those two numbers that are passed in. But
gotcha.
you're not really saying 100 or 900.
I understand. Well, and that's okay. Like, so for this particular case, we could probably just do like a,
if it was like that, then it could be between them. Yeah. But I think these are the type of things that TypeScript is adding in newer versions. Like even since I've been using it over the past 2 years, I've seen more of these types of helpers to solve these types of problems.
Gotcha. So, yeah. And I mean, and this is not really that big of a deal, right? Because if I go in and I set it as a number, then I can immediately say like, if, weight is greater than or less than 100 or greater than 900, there's a problem. So like I can still write logic, right? So we don't need TypeScript to solve all of our problems. It just won't, it won't catch it immediately for us.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
It would be nice if that was prevented, that you couldn't pass in 0. But as far as I know, that's not possible yet.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think like this would be fine for standard font weights. It wouldn't work for variable font weights, but that's, variable fonts are still new enough that I think that's fine. But so, okay, so this is actually new to me. I thought that you couldn't do this.
No, yeah, you can do it.
So that's okay. So that's actually really interesting. So what I'd be able to do down here then is I can just say complex config. No, I did that.
No, you
wrong.
put you do that after you const config : complex config. Yeah.
Got it.
But that's obviously not a valid object.
Right. So I would need to like actually set these in here, and we leave that out because we don't need it. And then this one should autofill for me. It does. And then, we could set our family to.
But see, you just glossed over the fact that auto completed for you.
I know, right? It happens so fast. It feels so natural once it's working. And this is really powerful stuff, because the thing that I think is really interesting about this, right, is so if we have let's assume that this was actually going to return something. Like we'll have a const link gen, and it's going to take this. It's going to take this complex config. So I can drop that in there, and then what that's going to return for us is, for now, probably. Could I just do something like this? Can I do this? And then
you could do that.
We could just return, for the sake of debugging, just JSON stringify the props. And then export default, link gen. And so now, doesn't like what? Oh, React must be in scope. That makes sense.
There you go.
So now we can get rid of this one. And my props are here. So then when I come out here and I try to use this.
Complicated. Okay.
Did I call it complicated, or I think I named this very poorly. I named it link gen. And geez, I did this all wrong. Oof. Okay. So, please don't judge my naming.
This was live streamed, okay?
Okay. So I've got my link gen, and then in here, if I hit Control Space, I get all of my setup. So I'm going to do my crop. Right. And then this one, it's auto completing for me.
Fill.
And then here, now what if I do my font? How does that work? Like, is this gonna, look at it go. Oh my God. That is amazing. All right. And so then if I try to put in the wrong value, it's going to say, nah, that's a string. You gotta make that a string.
You gotta make that a string.
Wow. This is so cool that this just works. Ooh, look at that too. As I do it, it pulls out the values. So I've already used family. So now it's telling me I've only got size and weight left. And so we'll say the size is 100. And now it only shows me weight.
Yep.
Hot damn.
And then it's going to be, I can't remember if you still left those dots inside of the definition of.
I don't think I did. I think I pulled those out.
Okay.
So then we've got our height and our width, and all of these are required. So what was left? Oh, no key. So if I save
key's always there just for you, but
check this out.
That's the case.
And so now if I go back and I look, there's our object, and without having to go look at that component to figure out what I had said, because this is complicated. Like we did a lot here. Yeah. There's no way that I would have been able to remember all of these props had I not just had autocomplete.
Yeah, exactly.
Dang, that is really cool.
You can though add JS doc to this. So I don't know if you've used JS doc before.
I once upon a time.
Yeah. So if you go back into complicated string generator.tsx,
let me just drop that.
JS doc is kind of like what I use when I can't use TypeScript, because it almost gets me there with TypeScript
Okay.
But anyway, if you put a line above line 4 and
Above line 4, like here.
yes, right there, and you say slash, like you're doing a comment, so slash star star 2 stars.
2 stars.
Yep.
Oh,
so
and
this
it already,
is now JS.
it's already like, oh, hey, look, it's JS doc comment.
Yep. So enter. And then now you can give a definition for what width is. So
Just
tell
like,
me what width is.
Just like any amount of.
It's a string. So just, yeah. The width of the image. Perfect. So then now we go back to our app and you hover over width and it tells you there, the width of the image. So you can
okay. All right. This is amazing. Like, this is amazing, right? Because I feel like this is what I always want comments to be. But I know myself, right? And I know that I am probably, in the grand scheme of people who are willing to like open up node modules and dive in and look at what's going on in there, I'm probably in the minority of developers who get excited about that, right? Like, I'm like, oh, let's go find out how this thing works. So I still never, ever, ever see these types of comments unless I've hit just a head scratcher of a bug. So being able to surface those comments to me in context is legit. That is incredible.
So like you were saying, like when you're building something that other people have to use, like this sort of thing is invaluable to be able to use a component like that. LinkGen is now so much easier to use because you've added that in there.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing that we haven't talked about that might be worth mentioning is what would we do if we had a default value? Like if I know that my font family is going to be like Arial by default.
Okay.
Yeah. Where do I declare that? And like, will TypeScript communicate that back?
Yes. So what we can do is go into complicated string generator. And so the way that, in prop types, it's dot default props, right? You add that to your component. You say dot default props on your
Where did I do this?
So this would have been without TypeScript. I'm just saying this would have been LinkGen dot default props equals, and we would specify this object, right?
Oh man, I haven't done this in so long. I always end up doing it like in the props themselves. I do like the ES6, prop name equals value.
Yeah. So that's basically how you do it. What you're saying is how you do it. So you put it in. You would put it in here in the ES6 definition. So we would have to break it out. That's
fine. So we can take all of this and we'll just
do stuff.
Take these out, turn those into commas. Font here. Take these two out as well.
Yeah, if you wanted those all to be individual.
Right, and then this is going to be Arial. Well, it's Arial. Unfortunately, I have to do that because I picked the hardest one to default. But so then, if we take all of these, we can copy those and just drop them in here. And, dang it. So it's actually going to be family size.
Family.
Yep. Okay. Wait. All right. So now what I've got is we're still using the complex config, so we know the types of these, right? They're all figured out here. Yep. But you're saying that now if I go out here, it should just tell me?
Yeah. So if you don't, well, it will default it for you. If you go to font, if you hover over font, let's see. Actually, I'm trying to think if it will tell you. It will default it for you, and that's now the default value if it's not specified. We need to make font, family also optional up top. So in our definition there, make it optional there.
Okay.
And yeah, let's see what it will tell us. It doesn't tell us what the value is. Okay.
Do we have to like double declare it? Like, do I have to put it in here or something?
No, you don't have to.
It doesn't like that. It hates that.
No. So it will default it in the code for you. But I'm trying to think if I know there's one way. You can also use JSDoc to tell you what the default is in a documentation way, but that's not as then you have to double declare it.
Right.
So it doesn't pick it up from, at least it's not seeing like it picks it up from the code.
It looks like we would have to JSDoc at default it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But that's okay. So to do that, we would do like at default.
Yeah.
Arial.
Yep.
And then here.
You would show, it's so when you're typing in family. There you go.
Yeah. Got it. And then it shows our default is Arial. So I could just leave that. And then I'd be like, oh, okay, I don't need that. I'd skip it.
Right.
And then it just works. Exactly. There's our default family, despite not having a family declared. I mean, that's slick. I'm into this. So and like, if that's the most complicated thing we have to do is pull out defaults to be auto completed for us, like that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. For communication to others. Yeah.
Yeah. And really, like, some of this stuff is important to communicate. Like this one, maybe not as important to communicate. Because, a default is a default, right? And if you're building a component system, probably the last thing you want is somebody changing the font family. That's how you end up with Comic Sans.
Yes. Exactly.
But I mean, this, like, I feel like this is really good because these are the sorts of things that I think are hard to get right through strict communication, like person-to-person communication. And this goes back to what you were saying earlier about tooling over docs.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. All right. When you first said that, I was ready to raise an eyebrow at you, but now that I'm seeing it in action, I get it.
Yeah. People continually raise eyebrows when I say that because I love docs. I love docs for the React docs that explain how it works, how use state works, and everything like that. But these sorts of things, I prefer tooling.
Yeah. Well, dang, man, this is really cool. I'm gonna make this slightly easier to read just by adding a text align left.
Okay.
Just because it was kind of messy. Yeah, there we go. That's easier to read.
There you go. I was wondering what was going on.
But this is like I love the Orta's saying types for tooling, and I think that actually encompasses my thoughts around this too. I think if I was to kind of bundle up my emerging philosophy on TypeScript, because I have shipped a couple npm packages where I wrote. It's not written in TypeScript, but I like export a type so that I get the autocomplete. So it's sort of like a middle, like sort of there. And what I'm starting to get toward, what I'm starting to feel, especially after seeing this, is that TypeScript is the most useful when it's the code under the code, the kind of DevOps stuff that you're talking about, or if you're building component libraries, or if you're building like shared resources. I think if I'm working on my personal site and it's a component that doesn't get shared, I'm really just writing components because I wrote the site in React and that's, whatever, it's the homepage. I probably care slightly less about it because all the code's in the same file. But I can already see what you're
Yeah. I mean, we indexed on like the props and communication between things. Like that's where TypeScript shines the most, for sure, at least in terms of React. But things like what we saw with class name where
it picked up the like class versus class name.
Yes. Well, no, if you go back to our link, can you go back to that component again?
Yeah.
Includes, like the class name that includes on line 19, like those sorts of things. TypeScript really helps with as well, even though it's your like internal thing. So we focused a lot on the props for sure. But there are other aspects of it too that we could get into when we start talking about hooks and how those things work and how it helps with those. So
I mean, we're a little short on time. We've got like maybe 12 minutes. Do we have time to look at a hook? Because that would actually be really interesting. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, we could do something with use state.
Cool. Let's do it. We can probably let's just drop in a new component and we'll do like a counter component, because that's one that I know we can build quickly, and it's not. So we import React from React, and then we can export default function counter, and that's going to take in whatever props it takes in. We can leave that blank for now, and it's going to return. Let's do a button, and we can just do like a clicked. We'll hard code it for now. Okay, so that's the structure of our button, and then we'll go in and actually, you know what? So that we can see the interface work, why don't we? Or I guess we're not going to do that really. We're going to have we're going to be doing it with the thing itself. So let's get the counter in here.
Yep.
This would be counter, I think. Wait, did I do it as a default or not? Default. Okay.
Someone in the chat. I'm seeing someone in the chat share out the TypeScript cheat sheet for React. It's amazing. It has all of these kind of recipes for solving different problems in React. So it shows how to do various different stuff with props, even more advanced things like, this prop can only exist when this other prop has been defined, like those sorts of interesting situations. But just give a double shout out for that in there. All right, so React use state. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So then I'm going to drop a count in here, and then when we look at this, we've got our click 0 times. So then I'm going to do a increment, and that'll be set state or set count be count plus 1. I think that should work. We'll do an on click equals increment. There we go. We have a basic counter in place. So to TypeScriptify this,
you don't have to do anything.
What?
It's already type safe.
Oh dang! I feel like I was hornswoggled just now. Oh yeah, look, and it inferred everything. It knows that we're returning void, even though we're returning a function. Like that's cool.
That's the return value of set count is void.
Right, but so it pulled that across to void is really slick. Interesting.
So what's happening is that use state, you're passing 0. So then it infers that the state you must want is 0, or a number rather. So that's what count is. Set count is a function that takes in a number. Yeah. And then everything works from there. So it knows that count is 0. Jeez. So if you try to do operations like a string operation on count, wouldn't work. If you tried to pass a string to set count, because it's going to complain. Like,
dang, wow. Okay, all right.
And where this actually becomes most helpful, because you know how sometimes we pass this like set count to another component that we've defined, right? And it's going to do whatever option. So like when that component does its on blank event, it's going to call this function. Well, we ensure that those functions are the right types. So we know that, yes, this is going to be called with a string, only one string value, and it's not returning anything. So we get to have that type safety. So if that component decided to change its interface and add, switch from a number to a string or add 2 arguments, all of a sudden things would break. So we can get into that situation and see how that will work.
To get us into that situation immediately, I moved the use state up a level, and now we're passing values into counter.
Yep.
So this is giving me, it's complaining at me. So
Because
do
we
we
haven't
need,
defined what those are. Oh man, we missed like my most favorite part of TypeScript and props,
oh, dang.
which we get to do now. Yes. So let's define our interface. I can't believe I forgot about this. So
Okay,
our
so
interface props for counter.
Interface props.
Yes. And we have to define the increment function. Oh, I can't believe I missed this. So
Okay.
increment is a function, right? So it's a function that, what is it? It's going to be called with nothing, called with the new value. How are we?
It's
what's our
currently called
agreement?
with nothing.
Okay. So then we will define, you just pass in empty parentheses. It's like you're defining an arrow function. So
I gotcha.
empty parentheses, and you do equal or arrow, and then void. So that's the definition of increment.
Okay.
So as opposed to React prop types where you just say, hey, this is just some function that's going to do something, you actually get to specify what the arguments and return value of your function are, which is cool. So now this is perfectly type safe, right? So if we go back into app, we're now saying that the increment function we're passing to it, it has to be empty parameters and return void, which is what we're.
So if I were to do something like, take the count and return hooray, it's immediately like.
Well, you have to define what. So, yeah, you have to define.
Let me do this incorrectly properly. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this implicitly has an any, and that's, I assume, because it's. Or why doesn't it yell at me?
Because you are what's the word? Providing a new variable called count.
I'm not
for this. Not using that variable count because you're making it the argument of the function. What's the word? You are
like redeclaring and I'm out of scope.
Yeah. So you have to provide a very type for other. So let's just say other is a string.
Okay. And now it's mad at me. Yeah. So I can't. Oh, because it picked up that other string returns a string because that's what's happening. And it says, no.
No, that's not what increment does. Increment doesn't take any arguments.
That is slick. And then this one, if I try to do something else, I guess it's still mad about this. So let's. Okay. Yeah. Once I fix that error, then it's like, nah, you can't do that either.
Yeah. So what if we switched things up inside of counter and had the increment function pass you the new value of count?
Okay. So we want it to return a number then.
No, not return a number. It's called with a number.
Oh, we want to like pass in count like this?
Count number. Yep.
Okay.
So now inside of the implementation of counter, we're going to define, what should we call it? Well, let's rename increment to, I don't know, on increment maybe.
Okay.
So this is already complaining, right? Because it's saying on click doesn't take a number as its parameter.
Yeah.
So the way you're doing it is already incorrect.
Right.
So it's helping us out. So let's create a variable or a function, inner function inside of here that will call increment. Yeah, handle click. Perfect.
Like something like that.
Yes, increment with count +1.
Handle click. And this is going to be count +1.
Yep. Okay. So now we're calling increment with the new value.
Right.
Yeah. So now back here, our increment function is incorrect, or
says,
oh, actually, technically, so this is interesting. Technically, it's okay because we're choosing not to use one of the arguments in the function. So this is one of those gotchas
okay.
where, so in JavaScript, you can have a function like on click.
Mhm.
Actually, it's just if you go back to counter, right? So I'll quickly explain this. So you can have your handle click, right? Technically, handle click is past the event, right?
Yes.
E, but we're choosing not to use it.
Hmm.
And that should be okay. That shouldn't be an error, right?
Right.
So if you go back to app right now, with our increment function, we are effectively choosing not to use the value that's being passed to us, which was new count.
Right.
So that's why we're not getting
Oh,
an
I need to
error.
make that new count, don't I?
So what you name it here doesn't really matter. It could be anything
Okay.
inside of there. Okay. So let's go back to app. So now our increment function on line 11 takes new count and calls set count with the new count there. Okay. And new count, we have to tell it it's a number.
Okay.
Okay. So now our code works correctly. However, we could just pass set count directly to increment. Like we know we should be able to do that.
So if we just do it straight like this.
Yes. Everything compiles correctly because set count is a function that takes a number and returns void. And that's what we're passing to it. So everything still type checks.
Yeah.
Correctly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's pretty slick. And so now we also know now that like anything we're trying to do here is we can assume even if we don't get the result we wanted, it's not because we wrote the code improperly. So we've moved away from wondering whether we've got the language right to wondering whether we've got the logic right. And I think that that's like, if you've ever watched somebody who is like new to a language or new to a musical instrument or new to a spoken language, there's so much cognitive overhead that goes into just making sure that we're doing it correctly. You know, like if you watch me dance, you're not watching me dance. You're watching me try to remember if I'm moving my foot to the right place that I was told to put my foot. Like I'll spend so much energy on thinking about how to do the thing that I really don't have time to determine whether or not I'm doing it properly. And so I think that one thing that TypeScript is giving us is that it's making sure that we don't have to wonder if the problem is that we're doing the language wrong or our logic is wrong. It takes that part out of the discussion, and it's just one less thing to stress us out.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I like that.
Let's see me dance. That. Let's not see me dance. All right. So unfortunately, that's all the time we have. So Ben, where should people go if they want to take next steps, follow up more from you? Where would you like people to go from here?
Cool. So I've got 2 places to send folks, and then I've got a special giveaway if that's cool.
Oh, dang. Yeah.
So on Twitter is the best way to reach out to me for, quick communication. So I think you had it up there already. So Ben MVP is my Twitter handle. So you can go there. I tweet about things. I tweet about tech. I tweet about basketball as well a lot. Although that may die down because the NBA finals are almost over. But I tweet about lots of different things because I'm a person. And the other place is my website, so benmvp.com. And there I have a blog where I talk about, that's all tech. My site is all about tech and things like that. And list of the speaking engagements I have, videos there. You can read those up top. But what I want to mention is the mini shops there. So if you click on that in the top left, so those are short workshops that I host every once in a while. So they're mini shops because they're mini workshops. So as you can see here, I have a number of them. One being TypeScript for React developers. So it kind of goes into more detail as to what we are just talking about right now. It's coming up at the end of October for those who are interested, and hands-on workshop and stuff like that. So what I want to do for your live streamers, so anybody who's interested in this workshop, I'm going to give away one free spot to the workshop.
How do we get it?
How do you get it? So if you can share the link on Twitter, please at me so I know that you shared the link.
Yep.
So share the link on Twitter, and I'll pick one person to give away a free seat.
And that is this link here. So share that link, tag Ben MVP, and you might be the lucky winner. And if you're not the lucky winner, go anyways. Yes.
But bonus points if you can share a selfie of you and the live stream. Bonus points.
Oh, yeah. Definitely do that.
Yeah.
All right. So we are out of time. Ben, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. We learned a ton. This, I feel like you kind of turned the corner for me on TypeScript.
You know what's funny is that I didn't even know that I had to do that, but I'm glad that worked out.
Chat, thank you as always for hanging out with us. Make sure you go check out the schedule and see what's coming up. We've got some really fun things coming on. Natalia is going to come teach us how to do Vue and Apollo next week. That's going to be a blast. Sweet. We've got Kapehe's coming on to teach us about static sites and Sanity.io. Sanity is what powers Learn with Jason.dev, actually. That's going to be a ton of fun. So go check that out. Remember, thank you again to our sponsors, Netlify, Fauna, Sanity, and Auth0, who all kick in to make the live captioning possible. That live captioning is provided by White Coat Captioning. And with that, I think we're done.
Yeah, we're done.
We're done.
This is my first live stream ever.
You nailed it, man. I never would have guessed.
I've done live talks and live workshops, but live streaming, Twitch, first time. Had a blast.
Nailed it. All right. So chat, stay tuned. We are going to raid. Ben, thank you so much for your time. We'll see you next time.
All righty. Bye.